what big questions that I have for you tonight? We're actually in the process of completely revamping Gluten-Free Society, and so I wanted to get some feedback from you all as to what you need, actually what you're looking for. So the first question I have for you tonight is, what resources would you like to have from me? As we're creating and we're building this, and we've got most of it built, but we're looking at adding specific resources based on your needs. So when I say what resources do you need, what I'm really referring to are different things. So for example, are you looking for more food options, more gluten-free food options? Are you looking for supplements? Are you looking for more recipes? Are you looking for more video tutorials and video instruction? Like, what are the resources, if we could create them, to help you navigate your gluten-free journey, to help you navigate your healthy journey and your healthy diet and lifestyle? What would you like to see more of from me if we could give it to you? So I'm going to pause right there. And if you would just, chime in and let me know. Again, we're going to try to be as specific to help you as we can be. So would really just love to know what resources that you're currently looking for and what we could help you navigate that would make your life just easier and make your journey on the gluten-free diet easier. So yeah, keep chiming in. Looks like we've got some of you already chiming in with answers to that. So recipes and food items. Carolina says AIP options and recipes. Slimmy says more food and supplements. Kathy says more recipes. I like this one. Allie says grain-free keto recipes. Some more support for kids. These are great. This is great feedback. So keep chiming in and letting me know if you've got something that you can't currently find on glutenfreesociety.org and you think it would be a valuable asset to yourself, to your family, and on your healthy journey. I'd love to know what that is, so that we could get that accommodated for you as we're getting ready to roll out this new site. So Cindy says gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free recipes and products. Everything I mentioned would be good. More food sources and more recipes, especially recipes that aren't too difficult and that teenagers would like. Okay, good. Easier bowel movements. Mary Ellen says easier bowel movements. We got a lot of products that help with that. GI Restore is one of them. Our Ultra Acid is another one. So what you're seeing, the computer just caught up with me. What you're seeing to my left there is the prototype of the new site and the way that it's going to look. So that I'd love to get your feedback on as well. And what I did is I posted So it cut me off for a minute. So, we'd like to get your feedback on the look of the new site and the navigation of it. I posted a bigger image down below this video in the feed. If you want to check that out, love any feedback you could leave in that post as well. But again, what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to make it easier for you. We're trying to enhance it for you. So we've got a lot of great suggestions that are coming in. Living with histamine intolerance, getting guidance on functional medicine. Love it. Yeast-free dietary needs. Search for information by. So elaborate on that, because we do have a search feature on the site already. So I'd love you to elaborate on what you mean by that, because again, it's something that's relatively easy for us to do from a technology standpoint. Monica wants to know about macro recipes for Candida diet that don't need eggs. published medical evidence to support decisions, not just my opinion. I like that, Chucho. I have a lot of opinions. But no, I always put references below as well. But thank you. Yeah, we'll continue to put that medical evidence up when we chat. I like it. Wanda says the banana almond muffin recipe was great. Love that. Love hearing that. And index to your videos. Actually, yes, Linda, we are putting that in. Absolutely. We're actually going to have a full library that has indexing with all of our videos, so that if you have specific categories or questions that you have, you can pull a video up that has those explanations. Digestive enzymes, more information about digestive enzymes. Let's see. Okay. So lots of great suggestions. Again, keep pumping them in, because that's what we want to know. We want to know how we can better serve you, how we can better help you. And we're going to take care of that need. Now, I've got another question for you before we get into your questions. And that next question is, simply put, what are your biggest challenges that you face, like on a day-to-day basis as you're trying to navigate the diet? What challenges do you find just in your day-to-day life? So kind of examples I'm looking for here would be challenges with cooking, challenges with finding a doctor who gets it, or who understands functional medicine, finding lab testing when you have a doctor who doesn't get it, family support, having your family support your diet change and your lifestyle change. So what are your biggest challenges in terms of your day-to-day living? Like, what are the things that you struggle with the most in terms of how can we help produce a service that might help navigate that for you? Is there something that we can do that we're not currently doing that would help that? So kind of, we're getting some great feedback here. Carolina says testimonials to encourage others. More emotional support. Charlene says all of the above. Tracy, info on labs for adults and kids. Oh, I love this. Diane says, have a question section. I'm just letting you know that's in there. We've built that in. It's going to be a very robust Q&A with a searchable feature, so that whatever question you have, if someone's asked it, there will be an answer by our community, the ability for our community to chime in, but also there will be a lot of video answers. We're doing a lot with video with our Q&A section. So yes, that will definitely be part of it. Okay. Information on asthma. Yes, we've got some already on that, but yes, I like the feedback. Keep it coming. Information on kids with autoimmunity. Help for oxalate problems. Help with not losing weight. These are great comments. Keep them coming, folks. Losing too much weight. I like that. So some of you say not losing weight. Some of you say you're losing too much weight. That's a great topic. We'll definitely keep that in mind. Sugar cravings, finding a functional doctor. A challenge is to find a way to Hashimoto's thyroiditis and how to treat it from the functional medicine approach. Challenge with rheumatologists understanding that I do not want to start a biologic. Macronutrients and what they should be. That's all right with the typo. Macronutrients, carb, fat, protein ratios. So JD says finding a doc, finding food that doesn't rock the boat. After my last attack, I eliminated almost everything, and now I'm afraid to add anything back in. Yeah, that's a great one too. We could do a intro back into food. Food choice limitations. Other family members, get so hard to cook with meals, 3 meals a day. This just helps confirm we're on the right track. Let's see here. We'll get to that in a minute. Bouncing back. So recovery, bouncing back after getting off of the diet. Finding a doc that will do and sees value in vitamin mineral testing. Yeah, unfortunately, not a lot that do. Finding something that seems like a treat or a snack. Okay, we got you covered there. I'll be publishing some info about that here very soon. Getting people to know that I am not exaggerating. Let's see. What supplements to take for C. diff colony brought on by gluten and dairy issues. To be realistic about traveling and having access to good food. Okay, and so context on traveling, interview other people occasionally that you agree with. Isn't that why they call it a second opinion? No, I got you on that. Let's see here. Effects of gluten on the muscle and joint pain. Barbara, I wrote a whole book on that called No Grain, No Pain. You might check it out if you haven't already. What to do about reactive arthritis brought on by inflammation in the gut. Mary Ellen wants to know. Mary Ellen, same thing. No grain, no pain. I can answer that question right away. Cravings. You want to do a show about cravings. You need information about cravings. Love that as a topic. Foods that support the thyroid. So you folks tonight are just full of great ideas. Thank you so much for helping me help you. Because really, I just wanted to get tonight. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just to kind of get some info and some feedback on how we could better help you. So, okay. So next, I'm going to go through the questions that you have that weren't pertaining to my questions, and we're going to do just a free Q&A session of questions tonight. So, those of you that have questions, specific questions, you want to ask them. I'm going to go back through and we're going to try to get those answered for you before wrapping up a short night. I just got back from a long weekend where I didn't get much sleep, so I'm going to call it an early night. But so what is the best test for SIBO? That's from Liz. Liz wants to know, what is the best test for SIBO? Is it a reliable result? So the testing for SIBO, the best testing is really hydrogen methane gas testing if you're talking about true SIBO, although I will just simply say this. A lot of people think they have SIBO. SIBO stands, for those of you that don't know, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And you can do a hydrogen methane gas breath test to try to help to discern whether that's part of the issue. But in my experience, it's SIBO oftentimes is overrated and misdiagnosed. And that's not to say that a person can't have it or no one ever does have it, but that's just been my experience, dealing with clients that come to see me. Oftentimes SIBO is really a bacterial imbalance more than it is an overgrowth. And oftentimes it coincides with a eating the wrong diet, predominantly eating a lot of foods that are too high in carbohydrate or carbohydrate-based substrates. And that's what creates or feeds a number of the different bacteria to allow them to grow out of control. So one of the best things that you can do for that is to do a gut test. Ask your doctor to run a comprehensive analysis of your GI tract to include your microbiome to see what types of bacteria are living and thriving in your GI tract. Because if you have certain bacterial colonizations that are too high, that certain foods will actually trigger the symptoms that are experienced in SIBO. So gas testing, breath testing, but also a comprehensive stool analysis would be, in my opinion, critical. Additionally, food allergy testing. You got to get somebody to test you to make sure that you're not eating the wrong foods that could trigger that type of response. Okay, good question. So let's go to the next one here. Let's see. So this is kind of a question, but macro numbers, what's needed each day? So from a macronutrient perspective, we're talking about carbs, fats, and proteins, right? And so with carbs, fats, and protein, what's the balance supposed to look like? Well, it depends. Many people are on a gluten-free diet, but a modified gluten-free diet or a GLETO diet, GLETO, gluten-free keto. And so if you're just shooting for balance, and this is where I like to start people, is with balance before we go too far in one direction or another. Because if you're trying to go keto and you go too quickly, you can get keto flu and feel horrible and not really respond or have great benefit. But if you're starting with just sheer macro balance, we look for what's called the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is very simply put, it's a third of your carbs or a third of your calories are coming from carbs. A third of your calories are coming from macronutrient proteins, and a third of your calories are coming from your fat. So a simple way to do this is to measure it, right? And you can go online, or you can go to the store and you can get your really simple digital scale that measures and converts measurements between grams or milliliters or ounces, etc. And you can, for a solid week, just measure your food when you eat it. Measure to see what it is, how much you're getting. And there's a really great application that you can download to your phone called MyFitnessPal. And so what it does when you measure is it just gives you a general idea of where you're at. And I don't think you need to necessarily measure forever. Some people get overwhelmed by the thought of measuring the quantities. But you definitely, if you spend a good week doing that, you're going to get a good idea of where you're at, right? And once you know where you're at, then you know how to manipulate it up, down, left, or right, so that you can get better balance in your diet. A lot of times when I have my clients do this, what we find is that there's somewhere 60% plus carbohydrates. And that's too high, no matter who you are. 60% carbohydrate is a carbohydrate toxic diet. You don't need that many carbohydrates, and it actually contributes to yeast overgrowth in your GI tract and systemically. And it also creates the SIBO and other bacterial overgrowths in your gut that can pose problems for you. So this is where we start with a third of your calories coming from carbs, a third from fat, a third from protein. And then you make adjustments based on how you feel. And this just goes back to, again, if you're doing this at home without a doctor's guidance or advice, you're just tracking how you feel with that level, with that rule of thirds, and then making minor incremental adjustments to it as the days go by to see whether or not you notice any difference when you eat more fat versus less carbs, or if you need a little bit more carbs and not quite as much fat as maybe a ketogenic diet will allow for. Because in that regard, everybody's unique and everybody's different. Your macros, themselves can vary from day to day, and you don't have to shoot for a perfect rule of thirds. But again, you want to make sure that you're coming close on average to some type of equality within your diet, because moving away from that can create, for many people, does create issues. Okay. So Suzanne says, how to rebuild the microbiome when you have low diversity of bacteria. Well, depends. So if you've got low diversity of bacteria, a couple things you can do to help to improve your microbiome. Number one is to take a good solid probiotic. My favorite is Ultrabiotic Defense. It's a very high dose probiotic with a lot of diversity in it. And it's a very high dose. And the problem with a lot of probiotics is the dose isn't high enough to really get colonization of the GI tract. The other is to make sure that if you're tolerating them well, is to make sure you're getting plenty of fiber in your diet. Fiber is what feeds good bacteria. So if you combine vegetable fibers in your diet to feed those good bacteria, and you're taking a probiotic simultaneously, that's going to help colonize and rebuild your microbiome. The other thing you can do, though, is garden. And even if you don't want to garden per se, spend time outdoors where you're getting your hands dirty, where you're getting your hands literally in the dirt. There's a lot of soil-based microorganisms that are very beneficial for you as well. That's why it can be healthy to own a pet. A pet goes outside, digs around, noses through the dirt, and then you pet that animal and you re-inoculate yourself through petting your animals. So those are great ways to improve your diversity. It's not to be so, if you are, and I don't know whether you are or not, Suzanne, but not to be super germophobic, maybe would be the best way to put it. A lot of people are germophobic, and the problem that comes with germophobic behavior is that it basically very much limits your microbiome's ability to grow and to flourish. The more germs you get exposed to, the more potential you get exposure to good germs that are going to help colonize your GI tract as well. And some people just wash their hands too much. Some people are overly hygienic, and it actually creates a problem for them. We actually have a name for that nowadays. That name for that is called the hygiene hypothesis. It's actually a medical research hypothesis that states that we are absolutely too clean. So you don't necessarily want to be too clean. So overly excessive washing of the hands is a bad way to get yourself in trouble. Again, that doesn't mean don't take a shower. That doesn't mean don't be clean. It just means that your own home, your own germs, the germs in your family shouldn't be perceived as life-threatening to you. Okay. So Anthony wants to know, hey, Dr. Osborne, what are your recommendations, guideline limits on eating eggs and egg yolks every day for breakfast? So that's a great question, Anthony. And eggs, I know a lot of you may be trying to follow an AIP diet, and some of you that's a good idea. In my experience, the AIP diet restricting eggs is not necessary for most people. For some it is, for most it's not. If your eggs are coming from truly pasture-fed and pasture ranging chickens. Another option for eggs on an AIP diet that might be less immunogenic or less stimulating to the immune system would be duck eggs or even quail egg as an option. And again, they're harder to come by, but they're also not mass produced in the way that the chicken eggs are. So you don't have to so much worry about the toxic genetically modified grains as a primary staple of food for those animals. So but I don't have a limitation on eggs. I eat several eggs on the weekends. That's explicitly, and for breakfast, I eat 3 to 4 eggs Saturday and Sunday mornings because we've got our own chickens and love to have an omelet. When I don't have time to prep that omelet Monday through Friday when I'm coming into the office. So no real restriction on eggs, but I also recommend that you get tested for egg allergy, because it is one of the top 8 allergens in the world. And so, if you're reacting to them, then that might be part of the problem as well. Okay, let's see here. Paget's disease of the bone, too long of a topic, Cheryl, to get into tonight. But yes, I can definitely talk about it in a future episode. We can do something on that topic. Does a gluten-free diet cause nutritional deficiencies? Wow, what a great question. Yes and no is the answer, Linda. Let's talk about what I mean by that. So a gluten-free diet done properly does not cause nutritional deficiencies. A gluten-free diet done traditionally does. What do I mean by that? Traditional gluten-free diets where people go to the store and they buy a bunch of crackers and chips and packaged foods and corn and rice substitutes from highly processed food. Yes, that diet is very nutritionally devoid. Any processed food diet is. And so in that regard, technically that would be by many's definition considered to be a gluten-free diet, even though I don't consider it to be a gluten-free diet. It's definitely not a true gluten-free diet, which if you're not familiar with that, read No Grain, No Pain. And I talk a lot about the true gluten-free diet, but a healthy true gluten-free diet does not cause nutritional deficiencies per se. Now, what many people suffer from is they suffer from the post-damage of years of gluten exposure. So imagine years and years of eating gluten. You've damaged your GI tract to the point where it's, you've got scarring. Just like if you get a deep enough cut, the skin will scar, and that skin won't grow hair, and it won't secrete oil, and it won't secrete sweat. Well, if you damage your gut severely enough with massive inflammation, and that happens for some people with gluten sensitivity, you can end up with a gut that doesn't absorb nutrients as effectively as it used to, and that can be permanent damage. So for many, it can be. And then if that's the case, it's not really the gluten-free diet that is causing malnutrition. It's the gluten-containing diet that led to severe gastric and intestinal damage that doesn't allow for proper absorption moving forward in life. Now, in that regard, what I recommend people do is get tested periodically, their nutritional status. Get your vitamins and minerals checked by your doctor on a regular basis. About every 6 months is ideal. And doing intracellular analysis versus serum analysis is also ideal, because serum analysis is not a very accurate way to assess nutrition. I've talked in depth about that in other shows. But no, a true gluten-free diet does not cause nutritional deficiencies. A traditional processed food gluten-free diet is horrific for anyone, even if you're not gluten-free. And the connotation that the marketers would have you believe is that somehow that eating those foods just because they're gluten-free are somehow healthier for you. Processed gluten-free foods, no bueno, no good. Does long-term chronic stress offset the balance of gut bacteria? If so, how do you rebalance your bacteria? It can. And again, the way you rebalance your microbiome, I answered this a moment ago, Joanne, is that you get dirty, you get into the dirt, right? You own a pet, you take probiotics, you make sure you eat plenty of fiber to restore healthy bacteria, and you get your stress. More importantly, you get your stress under control, whatever that looks like. I know that we can't control every stress that comes through our life. Sometimes life throws a curveball at you and it's hard. And life can get hard at times, but this is why we strive to create health, so that when we do have those unforeseen stress events, we're resilient enough to handle it without, just destroying our health. Okay. June wants to know, what are you missing if you crave sugar? June, craving sugar could mean lots of different things. For a lot of people, it means that it's not necessarily even what you're missing, but what you're not getting rid of, which is yeast. Yeast overgrowth in the GI tract will hijack your nervous system, your vagus nerve, and tell your brain to crave more sugar. So yeast is a very common problem with sugar craving. B vitamin deficiencies, and all B vitamins, not just one or two, but all of them. That's why Ultra Nutrients, which is a product I formulated, contains a B vitamin complex in it, because many going gluten-free and making that transition do have a problem with craving sugar, and those B vitamins can really help, appease that craving. Magnesium deficiency can create a craving of sugar. CoQ10 deficiency, iron deficiency. So think of it like this: any nutrient deficit that interferes with your body's ability to generate energy from carbohydrates, fats, or proteins that you eat is going to potentially send a craving message across your brain. Let's see. Monica says, I'm celiac, vegetarian. Should I do the rule of third macro? It's been so confusing. Some say 30 carbs a day. Others say 60 carbs a day. Start with the rule of thirds. Always start with balance. You can never go wrong when you start with balance. Where some people get in trouble is when they go from imbalance to imbalance, which is what a lot of people are doing on the keto diet. Is they're going from carbohydrate toxicity to high levels of fat, and their body has no idea how to take that fat and convert it into energy because it's trained to burn carbs. And so they go from imbalance on carbs to potentially to imbalance on fat, or at the very least an inability to properly metabolize that fat. So they get this huge keto flu, feel horrible for weeks on end, and get frustrated. So instead of going from carb toxicity to high levels of fat, go from carb toxicity to balance. And if you feel better after some time and you want to move more toward higher fat, your body's going to be better capable of handling that higher fat. So definitely recommend, that rule of thirds at first. Let's see here. What do I think about water filters that make water more alkaline? Cindy wants to know. I think they're a waste of money. You don't need alkaline water. You need an alkaline diet. Like, your diet should be designed so that you don't have to drink alkaline water to offset the acidic nature of your diet, which is where most people are. They eat such garbage food, such junk food, such high levels of sugar that they create an environment of acidity, and then they try to quench that fire with alkaline water. It doesn't work that way. Alkaline water, in my opinion, is all hype. It's not to say a person can't feel better or get benefit from using it, but if you just change your diet, you shouldn't need or won't need alkaline water in that regard. What can I suggest to help support asthmatic problems. Marie wants to know. One of the great things you can do is change your diet. A lot of asthma flares are triggered as a result of diet and cheating in the diet. Sugar can trigger it. Gluten is a known asthma trigger. One of the earlier names for gluten sensitivity is baker's asthma. And so, getting the gluten out of your diet, getting the grain out of your diet, in my case, for a lot of people, stops asthma flares altogether. Now, if you have environmental asthma, such as, pollen or mold or dander or something along those lines, filter the air in your home. Like, that's a predominant way to do that. Now, if you go over, visit glutenfreesociety.org, you can see if I can find that link for you. I can make a recommendation on the air filter that I personally use in my office, and recommend that people use as well, because you got to filter out. Our air is rather polluted in a lot of different ways. There's VOCs in indoor air. There's potentially mold, depending on the age of your home, whether or not you've ever had water damage or something along that line. So there's a lot in the air that people struggle with. I'm going to put a link in the feed right now for you on air. So I just posted that for you to help you with that question. Let's see here. Oh, I love this. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy says, I'd just like to thank Dr. Osborne. I found you about 5 years ago, and you've truly changed my life. And thank you for Gluten Shield. Well, you're welcome, Wendy. Thank you for thanking me. That it never feels bad when somebody says thank you. We do our best. And again, that's the whole point of this show tonight, is we're just trying to get more feedback on how we can better serve you all. Doe B wants to know, do I think the use of corticosteroids can delay the healing process? It's no, I don't think it, Doe B. I know it can. And it's very well established that it can. A lot of doctors jump to corticosteroids out of their tool belt of possibilities to stop or reduce inflammation in the name of healing. But every major study shows that corticosteroids increase blood sugar. And one of the biggest factors when you elevate blood sugar is it inhibits the body's capacity for healing effectively. That's why diabetics, when they get a cut, have to watch their feet so closely and carefully so they don't get those infections from cuts on their feet and end up with gangrenous limb syndrome and end up having their foot chopped off. But corticosteroids elevate blood sugar. Corticosteroids inhibit bone growth. Corticosteroids cause muscle atrophy. Remember, corticosteroids are catabolic hormones. They break things down. They don't build things up. So if you're trying to heal, that's an anabolic reaction. And in order to stimulate an anabolic reaction, you can't be on a chronic catabolic steroid. It just doesn't work that way. Bob wants to know if spelt is okay. No, spelt is not gluten-free. Mary Ellen, okay, let's see here. Are tooth implants harmful? Depends. Cheryl, it depends. If you're allergic to the metal in the implant, yes, it can be. I do see that happen on occasion with people where they are actually reactive to the implant. And so what can be done is you can ask your doctor, if you're looking at getting an implant, you can ask your doctor to check you for metal allergens and make sure that you're not using something that you shouldn't. Some will say that tooth implants will attract EMF because they work as a conductor. And that's a possibility. I haven't seen anything clinically that's convinced me that that's the major issue for people. Again, but I'm also not a dentist, and I don't deal with people and their teeth on a regular day in, day out basis. So just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. But I have seen people allergic to the metal in their implants. And so that would be where I would say that could be a possibility. Let's see, what would I suggest for someone who has a lot of food sensitivities and systemic candida? I would suggest no grain, no pain. I mean, if you really want to knock it out of the park without any testing at all, so this would be generalized information, right? Without any testing, use the no grain, no pain 30-day diet and stay on phase 2 of the diet, and for a longer period of time than just 30 days. And if you're becoming more and more limited in your food, as many of you have mentioned, The reason is because you're becoming more reactive to your food because you're not finding out what the real problem is. When people become more and more reactive to more and more foods as they're eating them, then what's happening is their gut is staying damaged, and that's a big part of the issue. So they just become more and more reactive to more and more things. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. An educated cook to cook for you. Some of you, yeah. I mean, I've actually had some of my clients have hired cooks to come in until they could get through the learning curve. Linda wants to know what Gluten Shield does. Gluten Shield is it's a full spectrum digestive enzyme that helps. It has a special focus on degrading accidentally exposed gluten. So there are a few enzymes in it that actually can break down the protein bonds of gluten so that it can help you minimize any potential damage for cross-contamination. What Gluten Shield does not do is it's not an excuse for you to have a gluten-free for all weekend. Some people are out there selling digestive enzymes kind of under that guise where they say, oh, if you take our product, you can eat all the gluten you want. None of those work in that way. It's more designed to prevent cross-contamination damage or to minimize your exposure if you're traveling or eating OPF. OPF is other people's food. Other people, if you're on a true gluten-free diet, then not everyone gets it. Not everyone understands it. And some people want to feed you. And so I don't recommend that you eat other people's food unless they are like you. They are also on a true gluten-free diet and they actually get it. Bonnie says, what water filtration do I recommend? For filtering water, I recommend, depends. So there are a lot of different things that I would recommend, but ultimately if you're on city water, I recommend a reverse osmosis unit. And I'll put a link up for the one I recommend. It's one, whether you live in a house or an apartment, it's one that can be used. And it's a great one. And the reason why reverse osmosis is because in the municipal water supply, it's not just about chlorine and bromine. You also in Houston, like for example, where I live in Houston, there are 42 different prescription meds that have been found in the drinking water. You don't want that. And you're not going to get that out with your basic types of filtration. So I recommend the one I just posted to kind of minimize your exposure to all the different toxic chemicals that are found on a regular basis. Let's see here. Oh, thanks, JD. She says, I found you only a few months ago, and already it's made a big difference. Thank you for that as well. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for that acknowledgement. Let's see. I love this. Mary Ellen says, thanks for changing my life. I feel 100% better. Oh, that's so awesome to hear. Wanda wants to know, are any grains gluten-free? Simple answer, no. There's no such thing as a gluten-free grain. There's only such thing as a gluten-free grain in the grocery store, where they have a food law that says that if it's wheat, barley, and rye free, it can be labeled as gluten-free. The problem is in the law. The law that was created for gluten-free labeling was based on science from 1952. And unfortunately, science has changed since 1952. We know a lot more about gluten and the different forms of gluten than we did back in 1952. I realize that lots of celiac websites and lots of doctors and lots of hospitals will recommend all that garbage stuff, especially to the celiac community. But honestly, when we look at the celiac community and we measure them, we do research on their inflammatory markers. We do measure as to whether or not they recover, whether their villus atrophy fully heals, or whether their inflammation fully goes away. The number of studies show that in some cases, up to 92% of celiacs who follow the diet recommended by celiac societies don't heal, don't get better. So you want to put if you want to put your luck or your odds in with the 92% that don't get better, if you want to put it in with the rest that do, I recommend, Wanda, that you read No Grain, No Pain, because it's a very, very lengthy topic to talk about the science behind that. And I talked about it in depth in No Grain, No Pain. You can pick up a copy at any Barnes & Noble or Amazon. It's published by Simon & Schuster, so you can pretty much get it at any major book publication place. Bob wants to know if I ever have a sale on DNA testing for gluten sensitivity. Yes, I do, Bob. We have a couple of big sales every year. Actually, one's coming up on Labor Day. So if you're contemplating that, wait for our Labor Day sale, and it'll save you some money on genetic testing for gluten sensitivity. Yeah, we have one of our biggest sales of the year in September. Let's see here. I love this. Saw you on a docuseries immediately after I received news of my daughter's diagnosis, and the information I presented changed your path to healing drastically. Love hearing that. I love that you found me in that way. I've been in a lot of different docuseries, and I just love that message is getting out there, because if any of you have watched me for any length of time and you subscribed to any of my emails, we've been getting suppressed. Our emails have been getting suppressed by the email carriers because the type of information that we're delivering. And so, you know, some of the bigger search engines and some of the bigger companies are now starting to, they're actually starting to suppress the information as it comes out. So if you want to prevent that from happening, there are a couple of ways that I encourage you to do that. Is number one, go over to Gluten Free Society and subscribe. Number two, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/glutenology is the name of our channel. I'll put a link up if you want to subscribe. Just hit that subscribe button. The more avenues that you have to be notified by me when we publish or do something new, the more you're going to make sure that you get the content that we publish and produce, because a lot of you have been saying here recently, I just put a link up to that you didn't get an email or that you didn't get a notification. So again, the more of the kind of channels that we have available for you, the easier it is for you to get notified. And the one surefire way to get notified is to make sure that that you visit Gluten Free Society and that you make sure that you sign up there, because in that regard, we have a little bit greater degree of control over how the information is received by you, and it's harder for the powers that be to influence that message. We're living in a very sad world where good, healthy messages are harder to get out. Let's see here. Can diet cause prolapsed mitral valve? Possibly it can. I've actually seen, I've seen mitral valve problems go away with diet change, Sherry. So it definitely can't hurt you to do that. It certainly can't hurt you. So I would definitely attempt it. Linda wants to know if outgassing of furniture can be a health threat. It can be, especially if you're reactive or if you're sensitive to VOCs, volatile organic compounds that are doing the outgassing. One of the things you can do is let it outgas. So don't necessarily, depending on what kind of furniture it is, let it gas out first before you start using it. Is a damaged microbiome responsible for GERD? It can be. There are lots of things that can cause GERD. Taking an aspirin a day can cause GERD. A lot of people don't realize that. That's why you'll start to see here. I mean, there's been a number of major studies that have been published here recently on questioning the whole aspirin thing, right? And because aspirin can damage the mucosal lining of the stomach, leading to the symptoms of GERD. Ibuprofen can do the same thing. So can naproxen. A number of medications actually can cause GERD. So damaged microbiome can, but so can certain medications. Oh, I like this question, Alice. We've been trying to figure this one out. So Alice is from Melbourne, Australia. And how can we get your products in Australia without having to pay more than double the price in shipping? I realize that. And I've noticed that conversation going on. We're not ignoring it, Alice. I promise you we're not. So those of you on the other side of the pond, those of you who are not directly connected to the US, we're working out and trying to find viable international shipping options that don't compromise the delivery of the product. So one of the issues is the timing of the shipping. What we don't want to see is, like, for example, a probiotic, trying to travel overseas and it's in route for 10 days where the heat can potentially damage it. And so there are those types of issues that we're trying to work through and create a solution that works for our international customers as well. But just know, Alice, that we're working on that for you. And as soon as we find a solution, we'll let you know. Amanda wants to know, is recurring cellulitis related to any kind of food allergy? It can be. And that's not to say that all cellulitis is recurring food allergy, but it definitely can be. I've seen cellulitis clean up really quick with diet change. So it's a possibility. If that's a question coming from one of your friends, that have your friend reach out to a good functional medicine doctor and look into getting properly tested. Question, do you take Gluten Shield daily? You can. If you're cooking and prepping all your food at home, you don't have to. I mean, this is where I go back to OPF, other people's food. If you're eating out at restaurants or anything like that, I would definitely take it. And kind of the way to take that is take 2 to 3 capsules 10 minutes before you eat, just to make sure the enzymes are down and in there. That way, if you get any cross-contamination or exposure, you're doing the best to protect yourself. Gina wants to know, is bread out of coconut flour or flax meal okay? Yes, it is. Okay. Can 23andMe, is it the same gluten test as the one that I use? No, it's not. It's actually not comprehensive. The 23andMe does not test for all of the gluten-related gene patterns. It only tests for a handful of them. And so you can get a false negative on a 23andMe. Good question, Barb. Does a C. diff colony fall under SIBO? No, C. diff, Clostridium difficile, is a pathological bacteria, whereas SIBO generally, it's not. You don't have an infection, you just have an overgrowth of regular bacteria. So that's kind of the differentiator, where C. diff is pathological. It's known to create or contribute to molecular mimicry and release toxins that actually trigger inflammatory bowel disease. So not the same thing, not in the same category. Best mineral supplement to take. There's not a best mineral supplement to take. Really, honestly, the best mineral supplement is food. Is eating healthy food that's grown in a healthy way. But if you're looking for a good multivitamin, multi-mineral, ultra nutrients is what I recommend. Beyond that, I recommend testing, because the minerals, you can get, if you just are out there taking mega doses of heavy minerals just for the sake of thinking that it might be the right move, you might not be doing the right thing. Leanne wants to know if semolina flour is okay. No, it's not. Yeah, Nancy, we're looking at a distributorship in Canada as well. So those of you, again, that are not, not local to the United States, we're looking and trying to solve those issues for you. So, okay, we're right up on the hour here. So I said I was going to go short. I ended up going the full time. You're welcome on that. I'm going to go home and take a nap. And actually, I'm going to go home and go to bed. I have jet lag from a long trip to California over the past weekend at a conference I attended. So I wish you all excellent health. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And also, thank you so much for chiming in with your recommendations. And again, if you've got any additional recommendations that you'd like to see us add as a reference or resource or a tool to help you navigate a healthy lifestyle, don't hesitate to reach out to us at glutenology@gmail.com. You can email us there, or you could respond to this feed if you'd like to as well. But glutenology@gmail.com. If you'd reach out to me and let me know, greatly appreciate it. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next week, same time, 6 p.m. Texas time. Have a great week. Take care.